Welcome to Around Town, featuring what's happening here in the greater Concord area. I'm your host, Dick Patten. It's a pleasure to welcome you back as we are now in the "'Tis the season," and that means we're in the political season as we get ready for another round of it. We got rid of the February stuff, and now we're going for the state offices and federal, as far as the Senate and Congress go. And I'm so pleased today to have as my guest Jim Rubens, who is a candidate for the Republican nomination for the U.S. Senate. He's going to challenge the current Kelly Ayotte, who is the incumbent for that office. So with that in mind, welcome back to Around Town, Jim, and good luck, boy. You think you've got a battle on your hands?
It's a needed battle. We need to turn the country around, and I'm running for really four reasons.
Yeah.
That we need to fix. Washington is busted.
Oh,
Everyone knows this. I mean, look at the primaries we just had in New Hampshire in February. We had a landslide on the Democratic side. We had a landslide on the Republican side. And in both cases, they don't agree on too much, but they do agree that Washington is busted and Washington is not representing the well-being and the needs of the American people anymore. So I'm working on four really big issues that need to be fixed. Number one, people are under wage pressure.
Oh, yeah.
People are worried about a secure retirement.
Yeah.
They're worried about their kids sleeping on couches, graduating from college with $20,000 in debt and unable to get a job at more than minimum wage. So we need an economy that is working for working Americans again. And Washington doesn't seem to want to do that. So how does you translate? What kind of policies does this mean? And it means we've got to stop with these trade deals that have exported jobs and that have driven down wages.
Yeah.
We've got to stop with these H-1B visa things that replace good-paying American jobs with foreigners. In some cases, you've seen where the foreigners are brought in on H-1B visas, and the American workers are forced to train their replacements, given a severance package which says, shut up, you can't say anything, then they're fired.
Yeah.
And the people brought in are working at half the rate of pay. And so you're taking a good-paying American job where people can support a family, have a secure retirement, and you're taking that away. So that has got to change. Trade deals, the visas. We need to change, and I'm going to contrast with my opponent, the incumbent, Kelly Ayotte, who is in favor of these trade deals. She's voted for the TPP. She's promoted this I-squared bill to dramatically increase the number of H-1B visas. And the net effect of this stuff is to drive down wages for Americans. And we got to stop doing this. We've got to have Washington work for Americans.
I know.
So that's the difference on that one. The second issue that I'm working on, which is quite important to me and vital, is national security. Americans, of course, want to be kept safe.
Yes.
We're seeing ISIS now operating in 8 countries. They've spread to 8 countries. And we need to change what we're doing to keep Americans safe there. First of all, we've got to stop with these failed nation-building wars. Hillary Clinton got involved in Libya, got involved in arming, funding, and training what became ISIS in Iraq and Syria. And ISIS developed. ISIS is spreading. Chaos is spreading. People's lives are being affected all over the Middle East. Innocent people, millions of innocent people. And it's washing up on the shores of Europe and in America. We saw it in San Bernardino, California. So what do we need to do? We need what I call a root cause strategy to work on containing, defeating terrorism, and keeping Americans safe. And this, first of all, requires cutting off the money. So we've got to tell Saudi Arabia, stop funding terror ideology. So the reason we have terrorism in Europe and America, these are lone wolf. These people are inspired, if you want to call it that, into action by this horrendous bastardization of this evil version of this religion being promoted, funded by Saudi Arabia. They've got to stop doing this. We call them their ally. They've got to stop. Another ally, Turkey. We call them an ally. They're a NATO member, and they are creating a conduit by which ISIS can export black market oil and human trafficking and antiquities through Turkey. And we've got to stop that. We've got to tell Turkey, if you're going to be our ally, if you're going to be a NATO member, stop doing this. So cut off the money. We've got to have vigilance on the ground. If you see pipe bombs in your apartment, report it to the police. Keep your eyes open. This is how we keep ourselves safe in America. Bunch of other stuff on my website. You can see jimrubens.com. I have a 14-point plan to defeat ISIS and keep America safe. And the incumbent Kelly Ayotte has backed Hillary Clinton's failed nation-building wars.
Oh, really?
That have the one in Libya where Gaddafi was taken down.
Oh, so when she was Secretary of State.
Right.
Yeah.
When she was Secretary of State, she was promoting
Yeah.
the actions that resulted in this spread of chaos and the formation of ISIS. And Senator Ayotte has backed these approaches, which has made America less safe. So the third issue that is very important to me is, this is the green eye shade stuff, but it's our budget deficit. We are spending way more than we're taking in at the federal level. We're looking at budget deficits of $1 trillion a year for the next 10 years. That's business as usual in Washington. And we're almost at that. Now, how does this affect regular Americans? Again, this is green eye shade stuff, accounting. What this process of loading the economy with debt year after year, trillions of dollars of more debt.
Yeah.
What it does is it has prevented interest rates from, if you're saving money for your retirement, you're getting no interest on your savings.
Yeah.
It's doing what has happened in Japan to the American economy. They're so loaded with debt now from deficit spending that the economy can't grow anymore because it's like maxing out the credit card. You got to pay interest on the credit card, and you can't buy a road. You can't buy a house. So we're trapping the economy in debt service payments. It affects regular Americans because jobs aren't coming here anymore.
No.
The economy's not growing. So this affects this budget deficit is hampering our economy. And again, I'm contrasting myself with the incumbent, Senator Ayotte, who's voted just in the last 16 months for $1.5 trillion of additional debt. It's insane, and it's all loaded on the credit card to be paid for our kids and grandkids. And during her term of office, $5 trillion, not billion, but trillion dollars of additional debt. And then the fourth issue that is, I think we got to fix, and this is at the root of all this stuff, is the corruption in Washington. And the corruption is bought and paid for politicians. It's politicians who get elected raising millions of dollars from special interest groups. And they get down there to Washington and they get their $100 a meal steak dinners and they get PAC money for it. And the problem is they're selling out Americans. They're voting for trade deals that are bad for Americans. They're voting for crony capitalism. They're voting for Exim Bank, where Boeing Aircraft gets 80% of the interest subsidies because they got the clout to get lobbyists in Washington. They're voting for Wall Street bailouts. And all of this stuff, and again, it translates into regular Americans. The regular American public who can't afford a $1,000 an hour lobbyist or lawyer to get down there and play the Washington game is getting left out of the picture. And again, this is hurting regular Americans. So we need, this is why I'm running, the fourth reason, we need someone who is not going to get bought and paid for down there. I'm gonna pledge myself right here and now. I'm going to serve no more than 2 terms, term limit myself. I'm going to give my pension back to the taxpayers. I'm not going down there to get rich. And the big one is, I pledge, if elected, not to become a lobbyist after I leave office. And this is a big payday down there. Half of U.S. senators leave office and they become lobbyists, and they earn $2 to $3 million a year. And it distorts your thinking. You start thinking about payday instead of the American people. So we need people down there who are going to work on working for regular Americans, bring wages up, secure retirements, make America safe. We've got to close the border to Mexico. People are. Let me talk about that issue for a minute. Senator Ayotte swore she wouldn't do amnesty, and then she voted for the Gang of 8 Amnesty Open Borders bill. Now, how does that affect New Hampshire? 3 ways. Number one, 275 people died in New Hampshire last year from fentanyl overdoses. This is an opioid. And this particular opioid is almost entirely manufactured by Mexican drug gangs. And because we've got an open border down there, we got Kelly Ayotte's open border down there, they sneak the drugs across the border. It's killing people in New Hampshire. The other thing that open border does is it means people can sneak across the border who might not have the interest of America at stake. Bad guys. ISIS people can sneak across that border. You got to know. And the third thing is it's driving down wages. When people come across that border, illegal aliens, they get jobs in the black market, they drive wages down. And what they found in Arizona, and this is one of the things I think ought to be done, we ought to enforce the law. It's called the E-Verify law, so that if you're going to get a job, you have to be an American citizen. So the employer checks the E-Verify system, and this is federal law right now, and Arizona simply implemented it. And what happened is the wages of agricultural workers came up 10%, and the wages of construction workers went up 40%. Forgive me, for 15%. And so if you give jobs to Americans, you're going to bring wages up.
Well, of course.
So again, we got to work on the border. We got to be working for Americans. We need to clean up the corruption in Washington. We've got to balance the budget. We've got to make sure we don't put all this stuff on the credit card anymore. So those are some of the reasons I'm running. And
well, you know what's interesting is you've made a couple of points, but I can remember back during Bush's era, and somewhat of Obama's too, but it was all Al Qaeda. We're at war with Al Qaeda. Don't hear nothing about them now. It's all ISIS.
Well, ISIS has...
So is Al Qaeda graduated into Al Qaeda and ISIS, or are they still flaunting around somewhere? I mean, it makes you wonder where these groups come from, and what bothers me is to see Americans wanting to join that bunch. What is it with them? What's the matter with them?
Well, you raise a couple of points. Al Qaeda is still around. They're still in several countries in the world. They're definitely operating in Yemen. They're operating in Afghanistan. They're operating in Libya. ISIS is more violent, more cruel. And the notion of ISIS is to form a caliphate, which is a particular piece of geography where they can have what might be called a country. They can have a piece of turf. Al Qaeda never worked on that. They just wanted to be terrorists operating countries. ISIS wants to be a caliphate, a country, where they can impose their sick version of violence on the entire country, and then to export it worldwide. And they're a more violent and more dangerous form of Al Qaeda. But it's the same strain. And I come back to Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, and this touches on America too. Saudi Arabia funds these madrasas. They have been funding they're our so-called allies. Saudi Arabia funded this terrorist ideology, this Wahhabism, and they're teaching this sick variation of Islam, which encourages people to kill people who don't agree with their religion. And it's being exported to the United States and Europe simply by virtue of these sick ideas being exported. So we've got to fight that war. We've got to fight a war on the internet. We've got to fight a war on social media. And we've got to tell Saudi Arabia, stop funding the terror ideology. We've got to tell Turkey, stop funding ISIS through the black market oil exports over to the Mediterranean Sea. So these are our so-called allies.
Oh, I know.
And so it's what I call a multi-pronged root cause strategy to defeat, contain ISIS, and keep America safe.
So how do you feel about this thing also, too, with the United States Supreme Court there about keeping that position open until after a new president? Don't you think it's wise to keep that position open, or should the president go ahead and suggest somebody?
President has suggested someone, Judge Garland, and the problem. I know you're a Democrat and I'm a conservative Republican. The guy he suggested is anti-Bill of Rights. He's anti-Second Amendment. Okay. He's anti-gun rights. Okay, yeah. I don't know where you stand on that, but I'm in favor of the Second Amendment, protecting individual right to keep and bear arms for self-defense and other purposes. And Judge Garland has shown himself to be hostile.
So that's not good for them. Then.
So what President Obama did, he had his shot. He nominated someone who is obviously opposed and hostile to the Bill of Rights. And the problem is people like Kelly Ayotte are likely to cave in. She voted for Loretta Lynch for Attorney General. Conservatives are not happy about that. She said she would have voted for Sonia Sotomayor for Supreme Court. So she can't be trusted with that vote. So that's why Mitch McConnell, who's head of the Republicans, he knows that certain Republicans can't be trusted. So he said, we're not going to bring these nominees to the floor of the Senate to be voted on. And because we can't trust people like Kelly Ayotte with that right, I agree with him. We're going to have to wait until the next election.
Now, with the primary season is underway now, how are you aligning yourself with the potential presidential candidate coming out of that Republican maybe convention? I mean, myself, I'm compared to being, I'm a moderate Democrat. Mm-hmm. I like to listen to both sides.
Yeah.
And then I'll make my decision.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my research.
Yeah.
check out, because you may have a better idea than we have. I don't know. I'm not afraid to, go for it.
Yeah.
But I'm just wondering, some of these candidates really scare me that are running for president. And so how are you aligning yourself as a Republican with the potentials there?
We've obviously it's coming down to a fight between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, he's captured the imagination of working Americans who have seen our country getting sold out. So he has captured the imagination of people who are sick and tired of Washington selling us down the river. He needs to grow up if he's going to be a viable...
He's got a big mouth.
People like the big mouth because he's willing to say what he thinks. That's what people like about it. But he does need to... He needs to become presidential, and if he's going to survive through this, okay?
Look how he's insulting people, and then people still vote for him.
Well,
I don't get it.
There was a period of time... See, he was refreshing to voters, and is to a lot of voters, because he says what he thinks.
Oh, yes.
And people are sick and tired of politicians who have stuff that their consultants told them to say, and it's all mealy-mouthed, and it's broken promises. You make a promise during an election, you go down there to Washington, and you break the promise. So people are looking for someone who is unvarnished. So he came out of the box clearly unvarnished, and so he says stuff that regular politicians would never say, and people said, well, he must be free to say what he actually thinks. Maybe he's free to represent me instead of getting bought and sold in Washington, instead of being manhandled by his handlers. But it's at the point in the election now where he's got to rise up to presidential conversation.
Do you think that's going to split the Republican Party? I mean, we keep hearing that if he gets the thing, that there's going to be somebody else.
Fight, but it's also on the Democratic side. Look at the fight between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, which is really going on right now. I'm going to talk about Hillary Clinton a little bit. I already talked about her failed nation-building wars. Now, Democrats are typically people who admire more peace in the world, as opposed to Americans, going off in adventurous wars all over the place, creating chaos. And Hillary Clinton is a major progenitor and force for this kind of dangerous foreign policy that has not kept us safe. It has spread terror. It has spread chaos. Millions of people's lives around the world are being impacted, and this terrorism that she has had a hand in spreading has washed back onto the shores of America in San Bernardino, and we're seeing this stuff. So, and Hillary Clinton, and I talked about campaign money corruption, which is an issue that I have. I believe that the system of bought and paid for politicians is not working for Americans. When she was Secretary of State, she approved a deal to sell 20% of uranium, American uranium, to Russia. Okay? Yeah. Now, first of all, that ought to make you be a little worried, selling a natural resource that you know is critical and that you can make nuclear weapons from. It's an energy resource, selling it to the Russians, okay? Weeks before and weeks after she approved that as Secretary of State, her husband got hundreds of thousands of dollars of speaking fees, speaking before individuals and companies that had a direct stake in that transaction. And the Clinton Foundation secured millions of dollars in contributions. You know what the Clinton Foundation is, the Hillary and Bill Clinton and Chelsea Clinton Foundation. Millions of dollars of contributions from people and corporations who were parties, beneficiaries to this transaction being approved. This is a state of corruption greater than, it makes Richard Nixon look like a piker here, okay? So for Democrats, again, if you're looking at Bernie Sanders, I don't like his socialism. It's not going to work. But Hillary Clinton is corrupt. Okay,
I have no respect for Sanders.
You don't.
Nothing.
Well, then you're in a tough shot because you've got a socialist versus a corrupt politician.
And that's the thing.
I don't know what you're going to do.
Everything is free tuition.
Right.
Sure. Who's going to pay for it?
Exactly.
The middle class. I'm going to take down Wall Street. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Go for it.
Yeah. The problem with Bernie's thing is, I mean, he's a well-meaning guy and people love him. Young people like him because free stuff.
Oh, free, sure.
The problem is if you take every dollar from the rich, it doesn't come close to paying for what he's talking about. And exactly like you say, it's going to fall on the middle class. The middle class is under a lot of pressure.
Yes, they are.
Wages have been going down, cost of living up. You're talking healthcare, you're talking education, you're talking housing. Wages flatten down. So we've got to be politicians in both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. You've got to be thinking about the American wage earner again. People want living wages. They want to secure retirement. And politicians going to Washington have got to make policies. This is why I'm against these trade deals. It's why I'm against these open borders, flooding the market with illegal immigrants that drive wages down. It's why I'm not in favor of these H-1B visa deals to drive living professional wages down. We've got to be thinking about regular Americans again.
It's very sad, and that's why I wanted how, if I were Republican, the one that I would have supported had to drop out, and I thought he was a nice guy, Marco Rubio.
Yeah.
I met him at the State House.
Oh,
and we talked for a minute, and I told him, I said, you remind me of John F. Kennedy and a young Ronald Reagan. I said, I think you're a fantastic person.
Right.
But unfortunately, of course, he didn't have the money behind him, or, the other ones are all going for Trump. But it's too bad. I think he could be a good future politician. But I'm telling you, this is going to sour a lot of people. I've never seen it like this. And nobody really wants to be in there. So that's why I was kind of wondering how it's going to affect you if you are able to beat Ayotte in the primary in September. Then if you go on and can beat Hassan in she's only went so far, I think, in November, that it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, we're at an incredibly turbulent, chaotic time in American politics. People are Congress. There's like a 15% approval rating for Congress.
Oh yeah,
hemorrhoids are more popular than Congress. You've probably heard that joke.
It's just, I've never seen such a mess in
Neither
my
have
life.
I. American people are really dissatisfied, and a lot of things have got to change, and it's really important. In some cases, you're not going to have a good choice.
No.
In an election, you've still got to vote, but in other cases, you're going to have. I believe I'm a good choice for United States Senate here in New Hampshire, and I encourage folks to check out my website, jimrubens.com. You can see in detail what I'm talking about. I'm all about issues. I'm about the stuff I just talked about.
Sure.
I'm about making Washington work for Americans. That's sort of a slogan, but it's what I'm about. And Washington is now corrupted, and they're working for special interests. And people make promises. They go down there, they break their promises, and they start doing quid pro quo deals for their campaign donors. And Americans get sold down the river. That's got to stop. It's got to stop.
I've read where where it looks like we're going to be sending troops back to Iraq now again. I read that in the paper the other day. They're going to be sending them back in.
You're right.
And it's like, why?
Well, here's this. You got to go to my website to see my plan to deal with ISIS, jimrubens.com again. But one of the things General Petraeus showed us during the surge in Iraq, we had that in 06, 07, shows we can win, but here's what is required, and here are the problems. Petraeus ran an operation over there, clear and hold. They went block by block, building by building, rooting out terrorists. It's brutal work. We got American soldiers. They're the best in the world. They can fight and win these wars. It's brutally difficult. But then you've got to hold the territory. It's clear.
That's right.
And then it's hold. Now, how long do you hold?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the hold is generations, because these terrorists are cockroaches. They will simply hide. They'll go to another city. They'll go to another country. Are we going to be running clear and hold and occupying territory in 8 countries? We can't do that in America. So we've got to have a different strategy. And again, the first thing you got to do is cut off the money, cut off the terrorist ideology. We do have to punish individuals who are terrorists, who are threatening or have killed or hurt Americans. That's more of a surgical operation. But to occupy 8 or more countries around the world permanently with American troops is not sustainable. It's not going to work. We need another model. We've got to get the regional powers that are around there who have an interest in regional stability, and it includes people that we don't normally get along with, who need to get in there and stop looking at American soldiers like they're mercenaries. These Arab monarchies, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Bahrain, they've got to stop looking at American soldiers like they're mercenaries. Okay? Again, I got to direct you to my website, jimrubens.com, to see more detail. This is a complicated subject, but what we've been doing, what Hillary's been doing, what Senator Ayotte has been doing, this war everywhere, these failed nation-building wars, it has not kept America safe. We need a better strategy.
Well, it goes to, you have to wonder, why do we always have to be right in the forefront? Why? Well, I mean,
Sometimes we do. If
I
there is
know,
a threat
it's like-
against Americans,
yeah,
American lives,
Sure.
then we do
Okay.
step into the forefront,
Yeah.
and we need the best, strongest, most technologically advanced military in the world. But we don't need the pork
No.
in our military budget,
No.
and we've got pork in it big time. We spent $43 million on a gas station in Afghanistan. Okay, that's pork. Okay, we've got the F-35 bomber, which can't fly. I don't know if you bet $1 trillion.
I can't fly.
They ran a dogfight between the older F-16 and the F-35, which is the new one,
Yeah.
and the F-16 won. Okay, it's about $1 trillion in military. So, and I believe it's a pork barrel project. So if we want a strong military in America, number one, it's got to be lean and mean. It can't have pork in it because we're already broke. This country is already broke big time in our budget.
Yeah.
But we do need the strongest defense in the world. So that's another
Sure.
point that I make.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Well, I'm telling you, it looks like you're going to be in for a busy, busy campaign
Busy
season.
talking about these issues.
Yeah.
I'm all about issues. I'm about
Yes.
making Washington work for Americans.
Yeah, exactly. But just don't make promises that you yourself can't keep.
Well, let's.
That's the problem with a lot of the politicians.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
make
yeah.
all these
Yeah,
promises.
Yeah, right,
They can't keep them.
right.
You know, like the president. I mean, Congress is the one that controls that. Basically,
Yeah,
controls him
right.
or her.
Yeah.
I mean, they can they can say
Yeah.
these things, but you are the guys who are going, and they're going to voting
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
You know.
That's a big question I get when I go out campaigning. Actually, I've been out at 2 events so far. I
Sure.
just started my campaign. The first question I got was, Jim, how do we know you're not lying? How do we know you're
Yeah.
going to keep
Oh,
your
yeah.
promises
That's
this time?
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I can say, look what I did in the state senate.
Yeah.
I ran in the state senate in the 90s. I got elected, and I promised to allow people to vote in the privacy of a voting booth for their town and school district budgets. It was a big promise.
Yeah.
And you couldn't do that before I got elected. And I
Really?
promised to have charter schools in the state. Big promise.
Yeah.
And my first year I was in the state senate, I got SB2 voting. It's called SB2. Still called that. That was the bill I worked on. Still called it. And I got it passed my first year in office.
Good for you.
And it required a lot of work. It required me to talk with everyone, to persuade, to listen.
Sure.
This is the art of, because no one's a dictator. And there are 100 U.S. senators. No one's a
Sure.
dictator, so you've got to persuade. And I promised to give the state charter schools, and I got that done my second year in office. And those were tough. I had to talk to a lot of people. I had to write the bill myself. I had to understand where people were coming from,
Yeah.
build up support in the House, then the Senate. Then I had to persuade the governor to sign the bill, and I did that.
Sure.
But it requires hard work. It requires listening. It
Oh,
requires
yeah,
talking with
it
folks. It
does.
requires respecting everyone. But I kept my promises.
Good.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Jim, and we'll get you back
Yeah.
on again before the primary and see how things are standing up for you. And again, go to his website, like he said, it's jimrubens.com.
.com. JimRubens.com. Spelled
Great,
like the painter.
so-
JimRubens.com.
Good. So, with that in mind, we want to thank my director, Ian Marks, again for all the work he's done on Around Town and Faith Speaks. And we'll be looking for you soon. And I'm your host, Dick Patten. Have a great day.